Good morning. My name is Paul Wiedefeld. I'm the chairman of the Maryland Transportation Authority Board. Today is Thursday, January 30th, 2025. I hereby call the meeting of the MDTA Board to order at 9 a.m. This morning, we're having our meeting in person at MDTA headquarters, and in accordance with the live streaming law, this meeting is being live streamed on the MDTA Board webpage. I would like to say welcome to the members and staff who are with us today. I also would like to state for the record that Member Rosen is joining us today via the conference call. As a reminder, I ask anyone who is in the room with us this morning to refrain from speaking unless you are presenting or answering a question to avoid background noise on the live stream. I would also like to ask the members to speak loudly and clearly so those in the back of the room are able to hear you. Also, please say your name when motioning or seconding to help with the meeting minutes. There are no members in the public, no elected officials, no media who have pre-registered to comment at this morning's meeting. For those who are watching this meeting via the live stream, we have posted the materials for today's meeting on the MDTA Board webpage, so you can follow along if you would like. We'll now begin with today's agenda. Before we do that, I did want to obviously recognize the tragedy last night down at DCA. We all obviously feel for those poor families and what they're going through and about to go through. I also, obviously, the governor has been engaged since the moment we've learned of this and have provided the resources of across the state agencies, and I want to thank the chief for sending his Marine unit down there as well to assist in the recovery efforts. It is a terrible situation that we've all, unfortunately, have had to witness. So with that, I will now turn to the agenda. The first agenda item is the open session meeting minutes of December 19th, 2024. Is there a motion?
Move for approval. Member Cox.
Second, Member Gaines.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Member Rosen. The second agenda item is the approval of contract awards. Mr. Davis?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Jeff Davis, Division of Procurement here at the MDTA. I am here to present a contract for award. This is contract number MDTA 2024, Construction Management and Inspection Services for the Francis Scott Key Bridge reconstruction. I want to echo a sentiment I had the last board meeting, how incredibly proud I am of the staff in procurement, pulling these contracts together in a record time with, we had support from a lot of people within MDTA, within MDOT, to make this happen. The Civil Rights Fair Practices here, Office of Engineering, and we're just very excited to present these today. Once again, less than a year after the unfortunate incident, which was the goal we've been trying to beat. So we're excited. So we are here to seek approval to execute 3 contracts under the solicitation number MDTA 2024-03. The services to be performed under these 3 contracts are CMI services for the Maryland Transportation Authority. The consultant shall provide professional construction management services related to supplementing and supporting the construction phase of the MDTA Consolidated Transportation Program. The consultants shall perform services in the following general areas: constructability reviews, conducting detailed inspections of all work, including erosion and sediment control, contract compliance, maintenance of traffic, detailed materials testing, critical path method, cash flow schedules, document control, and assisting the MDTA's DBE compliance officers with monitoring and enforcement of the DBE goals for this contract. So we have 3 contracts we are seeking to approve the execution of. AE 3133-000, AE 3134-000, and AE 3135-0000. These will be taken to the Board of Public Works for approval on February 12th. And then with your approval today, after appearing at the board, we would be able to execute those contracts that day and get the notice to proceed out as soon as possible. We had 8 proposers. Just want to make sure I got that right. Yeah, 8 proposers. The top 3 ranked were chosen to each receive a $20 million contract for $60 million not to exceed total. The first award, AE 3133, goes to Greenman Peterson Gannett Fleming, a joint venture. Contract 3134 goes to Michael Baker International and STV. And contract number AE 3135 is being awarded to AECom Technical Services. We have a successful history working with these firms in the past, and we look forward to their participation on this contract. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, just real quick. Thank you for your report, and also thank you for keeping all the other firms on there so the rest of the board can see that it wasn't just 3.
So trying the new formatting, was clear?
Yeah,
Yes.
that great, thank you. I guess I want to talk about the fact that this was technical decision. This isn't the low bid or anything like that. They went through a qualification process. We talked about that at the Capital Committee. The other thing, it's big numbers we see. It's also 3 companies. It's a big project, and I think one of the that we talked about that at our committee meeting, and recognized that there's a lot of work to oversee, and one firm that was probably too much to handle. So that's why it's 3 firms, because there's quite a different aspects of it. The other thing that I think that we've learned is at some point in time, and the executive director and I have talked, we're going to talk about the big picture and how these little pictures fit into the big picture at a future meeting. So just want to make sure that was out there for everybody to know.
Thank you for the work of the committee. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Oh,
It's different,
Member Gibbs?
different companies. Are their responsibilities going to overlap, or are they going to be in distinct areas of the
Well,
project?
so the scope of work is going to be the same for all participating vendors. Jim can go into more specifics if you need to, but generally there's a lot of work to be going out to these different firms, so we're going to lean on their specialties, and we're going to lean on their manpower and their bandwidth to get certain projects done by certain specific contractors and subs as needed. Is there a better way to say that?
I think you did well. Thanks. Jim Harkness, Chief Engineer. We're not targeting specific firms for specific types of work. We're generally just being able to draw on this specific expertise of those firms. It is helpful, and that's what kind of having a 3 different firms that we can go to, 3 different teams that helps us with that. But generally, the responsibilities may overlap. I mean, it's inspection services, it's management services. So while there are some expertise on different teams, a lot of their activities will overlap.
Thank you. And back to the big picture, I'm getting a little overwhelmed at times. Our last meeting, we approved another contract. How did that contract's job duties differ from what we're looking at today?
So at our last meeting, we approved the general engineering consultant contract. So both of these contract groups are owner support. It's just in a different way. So the last month's contract was mainly on the design side, everything leading into the design of the bridge. That's the owner support that the GEC will handle. When it gets into construction, that's what these contracts before you today will handle. That's the quality assurance, quality control of the contracts and management of the contractor.
There's no overlap between the two of what we approved last month versus this. It's distinct phases.
Yes, it's distinct because of the nature of this design build. It's not a clear-cut design stops and construction starts, so they'll both be continuing to work at the same time. We'll be in construction, we'll still be in design. So in that sense, they overlap by time, but not by activities and responsibilities.
Member Gates?
How much of our staff is going to be involved in this? I mean, do we have a budget for that, I guess?
That is budgeted into the cost of the project, our MDTA
Not
state
part,
staff
not part of
time.
this, but elsewhere.
It's not this budget.
You mentioned the experience of these vendors. Were any of them, I guess when you look at the Nice Bridge and this project, there are some similarities, I guess, and some of the work that is needed is similar. I know it's a little bit different on this project, but do any of the vendors have experience? Were they with us? You mentioned their experience. Did they do any work on the Nice Bridge, do you know?
Yes, some of these
Okay.
vendors were also on that project. All of these vendors have other CMI experience with us as well, so these are not new vendors to MDTA.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Just follow on to Member Gaines's question about overlapping. Is there any quality control mechanism that will be in place to make sure that we aren't paying double for services in that overlapping process?
Absolutely. So that's the role of this of our state employees on this project, is to manage these contracts. So we'll be managing these contracts to make sure that we're assigning duties and we're not doubling up on any efforts.
Any other questions or comments? Do we need separate approval or off? You can do one? Okay. All right, so is there a motion to?
Mr. Chairman, I want to apologize. I got a little ahead of myself. I didn't read the whole page. I wanted to confirm that we had received no protests on this procurement, and that the DBE goal of 33% was met by all three selected vendors.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll move for approval. This Member Gangemi.
I'll second. Member Carroll?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Member Rosen. Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
Agenda item number 3 is approval of collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order Police. Mr. Dangerfield?
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Percy Dangerfield. I'm Chief Administrative Officer for Maryland Transportation Authority. I'm joined at the table today with Ms. Tanya Dorsey, who's Director of the Office of Human Resources and Workforce Development. And we are here today to discuss the results and also seek the approval for the MDTA and the Fraternal Order of Police, FOP Lodge 34, collective bargaining agreement. Before I turn it over to Tanya to talk about the details of the agreement, I did want to acknowledge the hard work of the negotiating team. It's Tanya Dorsey, our Principal Counsel, Kim Millender, Executive Officer, Manny Crew, and also our Budget Director, Jeff Brown. They're also here today to answer any questions for the board. This particular agreement seek to address 5 goals for MDTA, one of which was to simplify the overtime rules and create policies that recognize the impact of officers and off-duty time. We also sought to provide eligible officers with more opportunities to apply for specialized units of functions, also providing officers with compensation sooner for performing high-level duties on an acting basis, and clarifying the type and timing of information provided to employees with respect to disciplinary investigations. And lastly, provide paid family leave to employees based upon qualifying circumstances. We do believe that this agreement does address those goals, and I will stop there and turn it over to Ms. Dorsey to walk the board through the particulars.
So again, Tanya Dorsey, Director of Human Resources and Workforce Development. Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. The following summarizes the significant economic impact. There was a 1% cost of living adjustment in fiscal year 2026, one-step increase for all bargaining unit members effective January 1, 2026, and an on-call pay amount of $2 per hour for each hour worked for individuals who work in a specialized unit. So that's a general overview. Specifically, the negotiations included extra duty overtime to be paid for time actually worked, with the exception of construction overtime. This provided some incentive for individuals who signed up for overtime that was canceled, so they will receive some compensation. Employees who work as directed by a supervisor are requested to work under the representative of a state's attorney. During non-scheduled work hours, they will receive additional compensation for any time beyond 30 minutes. Personnel eligible to fill vacancies in a specialized unit or serve in a specialized function will be given an opportunity to apply, so it affords greater opportunity for individuals to participate in these specialized units. And as Percy mentioned, employees who serve in an acting capacity who are assuming higher level duties, they previously had to serve for 20 continuous calendar days. They now will receive compensation after working 10 continuous calendar days. During disciplinary investigations, the employer shall provide the employee with any copies of reports written by the employee so that they will have an opportunity to review. Beginning July 1, 2026, eligible employees will receive up to 24 weeks of paid family medical leave for qualifying events. This was offered to be consistent with benefits provided to other state employees. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Percy.
Thank you, Tanya. Just a note, the FOP membership did ratify this agreement on the 24th. With that, we will conclude our presentation, and we will.
When fully implemented, the agreement provides an additional $1.3 million in salaries and benefits to bargaining unit members. There's an estimated cost of approximately $400,000 to cover the on-call pay. If the 1% COLA and one-step increment are applied to the command staff, it will result in an additional estimated $1.4 million in salaries and benefits.
And with that, we will turn it over to the board for any questions.
Thank you. Finance Chairman, any comments from you?
I don't.
Okay, very good. Any questions or comments? Yes.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all your hard work on this, and definitely appreciate the compensation, especially for overtime. But that is an area that could be taken advantage of, and so I just wanted to know what are the steps in place to protect that it's properly reported.
Thank you. I will defer to
The chief.
the chief, Colonel Scott. Thank you.
Took his cue well.
I try. For the record, I'm Colonel Joseph Scott. I am the Chief of Maryland Transportation Authority Police. And remember, in regards to that, what we did back in May of 2024, we put in place where every commander has to have what we call a overtime, for the lack of a better term, accountability sheet. So they've monitored that in accordance with every 2 weeks when they go through MTRAC, in which MTRAC is when we actually submit the pay cards. So with that, they have to do that every 2 weeks, and then quarterly, they have to send that all the way up to the chain of command to the bureau chief. And the bureau chief will audit everything that they see in that quarterly report. So that keeps us in track of, unfortunately, sometimes things happen so quickly, but that keeps us in track with that. So those quarterly audits is our answer to that, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everything you do, too.
No, thank you, man.
Member Cox?
This sounds like this is ultimately going to be a great recruiting tool as well, is what I'm hearing. Okay, great.
Absolutely, yes. Definitely puts us on par with other agencies, so yes.
Very good. If there is a motion for approval of the collective bargaining
I'll
agreement.
make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Cox.
Second, Member Von Terz.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Member Rosen. Thank you. Agenda item number 4, update MDTA Police Public Security. Colonel Scott?
First off, good morning, Chairman, members of the board. As I said previously, my name is Colonel Joseph Scott. I am the Chief of Police for the Maryland Transportation Authority. So as most of you know, 2024 was a rather challenging year for the MDTA police. With that being said, after the tragic events that surrounding the Key Bridge collapse, the MDTA police had the reevaluate our deployment strategy, specifically when it came to the influx of traffic at the Fort McHenry and Harbor tunnels. We were able to increase the number of certified commercial vehicle safety unit personnel, and we work regularly with our local, state, and federal partners in a combined effort to educate and enforce the hazard material restrictions in both tunnels. As we begin, and let me elaborate on that. So the phenomenal efforts we've had with our local, state, and federal partners, MSP, the Controller's Office, combined after the bridge went down, unfortunately, we were able to really have some initiatives, and we call them high visibility initiatives, to really target specifically commercial vehicles, but with that, a lot of education. So you have to do the education piece. So behind the scenes, you have to reach out to the trucking companies and make sure they understand what the restrictions are. So that was one of our big points of emphasis in 2024. As we began 2025, we hit the ground running. So on December 3rd, 2024, the MDTA police conducted a command staff meeting laying out expectations for 2025. And I like to call them the 7 pillars for 2025. And those 7 pillars are traffic safety, recruitment, officer wellness, policy revision, advancing technology, building trust and legitimacy in the communities we serve, and training and education. These pillars we put in front of us as we go through 2025, making sure we're cognizant of that at all times. Some of the significant accomplishments that happened in 2024, we implemented the MDTA Police Community Partnership Academy. And that is just in our continual effort to reach out to the communities we serve. And we had our first class, and then our inauguration class graduation was November the 18th, which was a phenomenal event. We also procured a body-worn camera system. The fully deployment should be by March of this year. We should be completed, and this will satisfy the legislative mandate of officers being outfitted with body-worn cameras by July the 1st, 2025. We implemented a female and law enforcement committee. This is to enhance the recruitment, retention, training, and mentorship of our female officers. We had academy class that graduated in April. We have academy class currently in, and they graduate February the 12th. That graduation will be held at 6 p.m. at the Dundalk High School. MDTA Police currently have 74 vacancies. That's quite a bit of vacancies, but that has not hindered our ability to provide safety, security, and service to all who utilize and work in the MDTA facilities. But in an effort to fill our vacancies, we were able to secure a grant for our recruitment, and this helped us with some advertisement. We hired 7 qualified candidates ahead of the new academy class start date. We were given final offers to 10 other applicants, 10 other qualified applicants as we prepare for this next class, which the class starts in April the 2nd. In the last couple of years, unfortunately, we have had trouble filling our vacancies. So in 2024, we had a concerted effort in just doing that. And with that being said, I could say the efforts are paying off. We've never been at a point this early before the next class to already have locked down 19 for this class. And going forward, I see we have 2 months to kind of continue to fill those numbers. So I got my fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. The days of having academy classes with 12, 10, 5 officers graduating is not really helping the cause. So we went all in, and I think it's playing off. 2024, when it comes to crime statistics, 2024 we had a phenomenal year in comparisons of 2023. Our Part 1 crimes, or what we consider our serious crimes, was down 16.78%. I believe one of the big factors in that was our BWI airport detachment. Our BWI airport detachment alone had a reduction of 20% in our Part 1 crimes in 2024 and compared to 2023. And what this appears to be is our CIU, our Criminal Investigation Unit, detectives, did a concerted effort of working with our largest detachment and really following crimes through, taking officers who start the patrol officer who starts the initial arrest, and then usually if it's a serious case, then detectives will come in and take the case over. You kind of switch that up a little bit. So now, if an officer has a case, they then stay with the case all the way through completion. So now they learn how to do warrants. They learn how to go out and do seizures. They understand that they're just more than just a patrol officer. And what that has done is caused the morale to increase. Anytime you're not just walking the beat, you're actually getting involved in the quote-unquote good stuff, that's an increase in morale. Another thing that I'm pretty proud of is the fact, even with the influx of traffic at both our tunnels due to the Key Bridge collapse, overall, we only increased our total collisions authority-wide by 1. And with all the influx of traffic, accidents happen repeatedly, but we only increased our total of 1 over the year previous. So I thought that was phenomenal. When it comes to leadership development, January 15th, we had 5 of our corporals attend the traffic incident management training in an effort to have all police corporals trained in traffic incident management. This training will give our supervisors additional knowledge and understanding of how to mitigate a traffic incident more efficiently, and this is also in keeping with pillar number 1, which is traffic safety. This month, we had the privilege of sending Captain Kevin A. to the FBI National Academy, which is one of the finest police command schools in the country. Captain A. is set to graduate in March. So again, this is in keeping in line with us getting the training and experience to our supervisors and upper command staff. Tomorrow, the MDTA police will be attending the law enforcement portion of the Polar Bear Plunge, where yours truly, that would be me, will be leading the MDTA police team into the tropical waters of the Chesapeake Bay to benefit Special Olympics. And then last Friday, our very own First Sergeant Ford participated in what they call a super plunge event. That's where you plunge every hour for 24 straight hours. And he did that and represented the agency well. And in doing so, he raised a substantial amount of money for Special Olympics. And ultimately, that is what it's all about. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions of the chief? Comments? Mr. Member Von Paris?
Well, Chief, it's good to see you, and thanks for everything that you're doing for MDTA. I guess shortly after the bridge collapsed, you had some officers come up, and they were here, and we met them. And I just hope they're doing okay. And I'm sure the board, we care about them. And the other thing I want to mention is you mentioned the restrictions on trucks and so forth, and communicating some of those restrictions through the industry. If we have my company, we're one of the founding members of the Maryland Motor Truck Association. If we can do anything to help there, reach out to me. And also the American Trucking Association, very involved in that too. So if I can help in any way, please reach out to me.
Absolutely, sir.
And good luck tomorrow with the plunge. It's only going to be 21 degrees in the water, so.
Hey, sir, you can come with me, but yes, sir. Absolutely, absolutely. But no, thank you for that, sir, and I'll absolutely reach out. I think, and just in talking about the officers who were some of the first officers on the scene during the collapse. So we have a health and wellness team, and they monitor. And in the very beginning, the first couple of months, there was a few who continually went through monitoring, I'll put it that way, but since then, they're doing phenomenal. And I just got to reiterate, the realities of what they did is what we do. It's what we do. The accolades and all that is phenomenal, but they will tell you they're doing their job. They are doing their job. But thank you, sir.
Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you, Chief.
Thank
Just
you.
a comment.
Yes, sir.
I did the polar plunge on the first hint, Bring a robe.
All right. Thank you, sir. I will take that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Agenda item number 5 is update independent auditors report. Ms. Sharpless?
Good morning. For the record, I'm Deborah Sharpless, MDTA's Chief Financial Officer. For today's presentation, I'm going to refer you to the PowerPoint that was provided to you. This presentation was presented to the Finance Committee earlier this month. So starting on slide 2, very quickly, we're just going to give a really quick overview of the audit, touch upon internal controls, tell you about the communications we had with the auditors and any future considerations. First, on page 3, you see key players. Everybody's familiar with the MDTA players. Our principal for the audit was Sean Walker. He's been our principal for about the last 4 or 5 years at CLA. So moving on to slide 4, areas of emphasis are listed: investments, capital assets, and leases. There was a new GASB that was issued on leases, so that's why we don't have a lot of them, but the implementation of the GASB was a little complicated. Long-term debt, revenue, including any estimating of revenue if applicable, interagency relationships and revenue there, financial reporting, are the statements fairly presented, and the key bridge transactions. I'll talk a little bit more. I can do it now. With the key bridge, they're government accounting standard boards. They issue pronouncements, and financial statements need to be in accordance with them. When they issue new pronouncements, they'll go out for comments, they'll be revised, and then you'll have a date where you need to implement them. And they usually give you a few years before you need to implement them. We early adopted GASB 103, and it had us report the key bridge differently in our financial statements than before this pronouncement was issued. There's an extraordinary event. Previously, you had to meet 2 requirements to call something extraordinary. Now, I sit here and I think, well, the elision with the key bridge, that's extraordinary, right? But from an accounting perspective, is it? There's ships in water all the time. Could it happen again? From an accounting perspective, it was difficult to hit both criterias. But under this new GASB, we only had to meet one of them. And it allowed us to carve out the key bridge separately for the unique aspects of it, so that when we compare our information, you can see trends, because the idea with financial statements, they're supposed to be smooth. You're not supposed to have spikes and valleys. That's hard to understand in organizations' financial health if you have spikes and valleys. So the early adoption of this GASB, we were among probably, the last I heard, the only that had implemented this GASB. So, several people cut their teeth, learning how to do this one. So that's why there was so much focus on the key bridge. Internal controls. So no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies were identified. This is a consistent pattern you see with MDTA's financial statements. But I do need to make sure everybody understands, as part of the audit, there was not an internal control audit. They review internal controls as they may affect the fair presentations of the financial statements. So there are no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies that could have affected the fairness of the statements. Okay. Let's see. So then auditors have required communications that occurred with the Finance Committee. One of them is about accounting policies. We just talked about GASB 103 a second ago. Estimates, the allowance for receivables. All receivables have an allowance for bad debt, pollution remediation liabilities, capital asset depreciation and pension liability. So they talked about accounting estimates, and those are 4 of the largest areas where we have estimates in our financial statements. And then there were no difficulties encountered performing the audit, both with our work product or the communications with management. Continuing with communications, there were no uncorrected transactions. There were no corrected transactions. So basically, it means that we didn't miss anything with the statements that we presented to the auditors. There were no disagreements. No consultants were used other than CLA's auditors. There were no significant issues discussed with management, and management provided a representation letter. And I guess the most important thing is we received an unqualified opinion. Some people use the term a clean opinion. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any questions or comments?
Okay.
Thank you, Deb. Appreciate it. Next item is legislative reports submitted to the legislature. Deb?
Sure. Thank you. So the MDTA prepared a joint chairman's report. During last year's session, we were asked to prepare a report that addressed the collections of outstanding tolls from out-of-state motorists. So in the request, they were really focused on some data, which we provided in the report, and they were very focused on what have we done with what's called out-of-state reciprocity and a collections contract. So out-of-state reciprocity, in this perspective, it's an enforcement reciprocity. And if I owed tolls in Pennsylvania, let's use Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania would reach out to Maryland for my registration to be flagged because of unpaid tolls, consistent with how it works for Marylanders. If someone in Pennsylvania owed tolls in Maryland, we would reach out to Pennsylvania and they would take similar action. That's what out-of-state reciprocity is. Not to confuse it with like toll interoperability. Easy Pass transactions are interoperable, right? You can travel anywhere in the Easy Pass network, and regardless of what toll agency you went through, your tolls would be collected. Okay, that's toll interoperability. This, we're talking about enforcement interoperability, and then a collections contract. And so in the report, we acknowledged that these are good tools. They're important tools. But at this juncture, they weren't the most important tools that we needed to focus on. Because like in any business, you have a multitude of options that you can use, but you can't do all of them. You don't have enough resources. You have to pick and choose which initiatives have the highest priority and produce the best benefit for your company, or in this case, our agency, and you focus on them first, and then when you take care of those, you work down your list. And so out-of-state reciprocity and collections, it's high on the list. It wasn't the highest on the list. And so what was the highest on the list? It had to do with electronic toll payments, in specifically Easy Pass. We are seeing, and the data was provided in the report, that we have video toll customers, getting more and more video toll customers to shift to Easy Pass. That's 100% payment rate, right? Video toll is not 100% payment rate. So the emphasis was there. Working with the Easy Pass group, the national group that I chair, and many exceptional members on that team, expanding Easy Pass, the inclusion of Minnesota and Florida, the work that's being done to be able to join the central hub. The central hub is Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado. In the report, you see Texas is one of the top 5 states that have outstanding tolls to us. That's where our emphasis has been. That produced, the result of more tolls being paid than these other good strategies, just not the strategies that produce the same amount of results as expanding Easy Pass. And that's where our focus has been. Also, readers, the technology in the lane that reads that transponder. In Easy Pass, the technology is called TDM. And just think about it as a language, English, Spanish, French. Other regions have 6C or SEGO. They're different languages. Before we could start and be able to be interoperable with the central region in other areas, we had to be able to read their technology. We've taken care of that. That's what our efforts have been to reduce not just out-of-state collections, but collections in general. And so the last thing that we do in the report is we talk about other types of initiatives that we have. Moving forward with Pennsylvania, with out-of-state reciprocity, because that's something we need to be very mindful of, is each agency has very different rules, very different civil penalties. Pennsylvania and Maryland line closely. And we also align from a customer service perspective that if we placed a flag on a Marylander's registration because they didn't have an unpaid toll in Pennsylvania, as soon as they pay that toll, that flag's got to be released, and vice versa. That we align in that way. And so that's where working with Pennsylvania is our first agency to try to, enter into an out-of-state reciprocity agreement. And then a collections RFP. Other things that we're working on, and we can give, Richard and I can provide periodic updates to you, is things that just make it easier to pay. QR codes on notices. Implementing an additional notice in between the notice of toll due and the citation. Call it a reminder. Those types of actions that we're also will be pursuing, we can give updates in the future on. So that's not reading any particular section of the report, but that's an overview of the approach that we've taken to address collections. I know it's very hard to prove a negative. We recognize the amount of unpaid tolls, and it's hard to say, well, had we not done this effort, to say what it would have been. That's very difficult to do. But we can see it with the shift in our customers, which also means your consistent good paying customers, our regular paying video toll customers, they're shifting over to something like Easy Pass, which means the remaining customers in video are the less reliable paying customers. And that's a national trend that's being seen. When we talked about our traffic and revenue report, when we had presented that, we talked about that at that time because our independent TNR consultants even noted it in our traffic and revenue report. So happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Deb. I mean, this is one of the biggest questions I get even from legislators. We were down there yesterday and talked to some a little bit, and they're actually happy about our percentages, but they obviously, a couple questions. One, differential on out-of-state versus in-state, percentage of in-state or unpaid tolls versus out-of-state. And I also note here that in reading through this, you were talking about Pennsylvania. How about Virginia? Is it in line, or is it obviously not as in line as far as with Maryland?
Virginia, in our perspective, is very challenging. When you enter into these agreements, you do it on an agency-by-agency basis. If I have to look in the report because it's in there, I think Virginia has 13 toll agencies?
Yes, I see that.
Okay, and their penalties are different than ours. They have a different approach than we do. So they are not as similar to us as an agency such as Pennsylvania.
So reciprocity with them is totally different than Virginia, than Pennsylvania, is that correct?
We think it would have far more challenges.
Okay.
So let's start with another agency that's similar to us. As you're implementing anything big, we will have learning curves, So let's start that with two agencies that are committed to the customer service. And I don't mean to imply that Virginia's not. We just know Pennsylvania is. And two agencies that have closer philosophies and closer structures in how they address uncollectible tolls, what actions they take, and whose structures are closer, fee levels are closer.
And in-state, I know one of the biggest challenges, and out-of-state, is tags that are switched, that are stolen cars, and I'm sure with the chief and their group, switching tags, trying to track down people that actually are owners of, where a tag is, videoed and sent a notice, and they were not the owner of the car, or it's been switched. I know that's still a challenge, correct?
It can be. We use the term leakage. So when vehicles travel on our roadway, you have a legitimate video toll when that toll is going to the registered owner. So if license plates are blocked, or we go to a DMV and we have a no hit, that they're not in the records because of a sale or something like that, or the address is not current. We call those nixies, where we weren't able to deliver the notice. When that is what we use the term as leakage, almost like from an accounting perspective, the easiest thing to compare it to is a grocery store. When a grocery store does not sell all of that produce, some of it spoils, right? It's the same way with our roadway. Some of those vehicles we can't get to the owner because of the plate being blocked. Someone's trying to do something fraudulent to hide their plate, or not even have the correct plate, or bad address at the DMV. Like, that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
That is different than this.
Right.
Okay. This is where we had the right customer.
Right.
The notice was delivered.
Got it.
And they haven't paid. And your question about in-state versus out-of-state, at the time that we did this report, and this was based on 11 years, we used 11 years worth of data. In-state represented 48% of unpaid, and out-of-state represented 52%.
Okay.
Now, a piece of that is because of the out-of-state truck traffic, which has a higher toll. So if we were looking at individual transactions, those percentages would be different. The ones I just shared with you are based on dollars.
Okay. Thanks, Deb. Thanks for the report. We've been obviously looking at this for a long time, and I appreciate your update.
I'm going to echo that. Thanks for the report, and thanks for the explanation, because I went right straight to the number, and then I realized it was over 11 years. And I understand the prioritization. I think that was a good move. Have we seen over that 11-year period, because we've been emphasizing Easy Pass, have we seen those numbers go down?
But the emphasis hasn't spanned these 11 years.
Got it.
Right? During at one point in time, video tolls, when back in 2014 and, up till AET conversion, if my memory's correct, video tolls was like 4% of transactions. That's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
So this great emphasis on Easy Pass has largely been, since AET.
We can't answer the question yet. That's fine. I guess the other question I have is, several years ago, we approved a collection, I think we approved a vendor for collections or something like that. I sort of remember something. It's been a while.
The ability to do that.
Oh, I'm
The
sorry.
ability to collect out of state.
Yeah, we
Yes.
still did.
Yes, from a statute perspective, we have the authority to, one, enter into out-of-state enforcement reciprocity, and two, pursue collections for out-of-state without going through the central collections unit. We do have that authority.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the report. The numbers that we're looking at, were you able to do a breakdown to tell us, is it more commercial related, passenger related with the out-of-state failure to pay?
So, I don't know those off the top of my head right now. Understanding our traffic volume, we have a substantial amount of out-of-state commercial. Now, of traffic, passenger volume's going to be higher, but out-of-state commercial is higher than in-state commercial.
If there are tolls attached to an out-of-state license, and for some reason that car, we'll say a car, is pulled over, is there anything that can happen at that point?
Not that I'm aware of now.
Okay. And I know that we use the outside collection. I wasn't sure how that works. I'm assuming that the outstanding debt is attached to a license plate?
The license plate is identifying the registered owner.
Okay, so the registered owner would be liable.
That's who's liable for the video toll.
Okay,
So that's the connection with the license plate, is our means to identify who the registered owner is. So if it's an out-of-state vehicle, in some situations, we have what we call a direct connection with the out-of-state motor vehicle administration. And in other cases, TransCore has a contractor that provides that, we call it lookup. So that's what the license plate is used for, is to identify who that person is. But today, that plate isn't flagged for non-renewal or suspended out of state if they owe tolls in Maryland.
and using a collection agency to go after that registered owner, how successful has that been?
I mean, we have not, right? I mean, that's one of the initiatives that we have. They produce some collections, but not significant. That the real enforcement is the out-of-state reciprocity. Being able to flag a registration. That unfortunately for a piece of the population, it takes actions like that to cause. Generally, if you owe outstanding tolls and collection agencies pursuing you, that doesn't go in your credit report. So a lot of times where collection agencies can be effective is when they're working with companies that want to pay. It's just that the administrative process with so many toll agencies across the country is too much for them. And so that's where collection agencies can also be effective, is there's got to be the willingness to pay. And so sometimes collection agencies can get to the hold up for why someone hasn't paid.
Thank you.
Mr. Gardner?
If any other members have questions, I just wanted to conclude with something, but I've deferred to any member.
I just have a couple comments. This Member Von Paris, I know you're working hard at this, and I know your team has for quite a while.
Operations, everybody.
And your experience here in Maryland, but now you're on the national stage. You have with MDTA, you have a big picture of how it's going throughout the country, and that's a benefit to MDTA.
Right.
One of the it can be complicated. When I guess I was going to say what's standing in our way, and technology is an issue definitely, and cooperation from other states. I don't know what we can leverage with relationships with that. There's a National Governors Association, whatever, but it's got to be a problem for the other people as well as for us. But I think and then the other thing is looking at the amount of revenue that we're not able to collect. Do we? We're doing this internally for the most part, trying to fix it internally with our team.
No,
Or do we have any third parties engaged to try to help us?
We have strong relationships with other toll agencies, and you spoke about IBTTA. So one one of the committees that they have is what's called Revenue Assurance Committee. And that's where toll agencies are communicating with each other and sharing what they've done to try to improve collections. Is like seeing, invoice type collections. We call it video tolls in Maryland. All toll agencies are seeing a decrease in collections. It's because of that shift that's happening with, consistently paying customers that were previously video tolls moving over to Easy Pass. All of us are seeing it. So individuals in finance and operations under Richard, all of us are active at an IBTTA level. It's not just myself on the board. We have numerous employees here that stay engaged. And the same thing with the Easy Pass group. There are committees there, policy and reciprocity and finance and procurement. They're all engaged. MDTA employees are engaged in that. We meet bi-monthly where we go over, we compare notes, so there is that engagement across the board.
Okay.
Any
Thank
other
you.
comments?
Thank you.
From the board members? All right, Mr. Gardner?
Thanks, Executive Director Bruce Gardner. Just wanted to add in that, I really do appreciate, Deb said a lot here, but from my standpoint, when I came in here and talked to the chairman about, what the challenges that I needed to face and try to conquer in the first couple of years, this was one of them. This was an immediate, one on the books. Other events took place. The team has really re-engaged on this topic. I do appreciate that. Richard from operations, Deb, and our consultants. I mean, what Deb didn't say is like the consultants that we rely on, they serve other agencies. So their learning experiences come to us through that kind of outside advice. The other thing I'd say to the national picture is that when we're in rooms with our colleagues, as Deb's referenced, and you're comparing notes, I think you've all been in that situation. I was comparing this with the Deputy Secretary the other day who's realized that grass isn't always greener on the other side, right? Other people have big challenges, and, we're able to share, Will Pines was, an email sharing what his experience was a few years ago to someone else, and those challenges. So we really do have some benefits. We have a much more stable system now. Deb's able to pull a lot more information. So this report is kind of a baseline. We look forward to coming back to you on a regular basis now that we've kind of laid out some of the strategies and putting some time frames to that in committee, so we can report back on how these things are going on a more regular increment. Because if you do feel like we've hit, like with this, kind of a baseline of here's where we are, and we need to show what the improvements are to you on that, of course, particularly I think with Finance Committee. So we're committed to doing that. So.
Anything else? All right, thank you, Deb. Next agenda item is legislative session update. Mary?
Well, good morning. Mary O'Keefe, representing MDTA Government Relations today. Our Manager of Government Relations, Brad Ryan, is down in Annapolis today, so I will be sitting in on his behalf. So I want to give you an update on where we are with General Assembly as of today. So as you know, we convened on January 8th, and the General Assembly will be going until April 7th. So Bruce and our government relations team have been meeting with legislators and staff since the beginning of the General Assembly and a few weeks before to weigh in and talk about issues that would directly impact the MDTA. So as of this morning, 1,606 bills have been introduced. We have 702 in the Senate and 904 in the House. All of them are not MDTA bills, but I just wanted to give you sort of the extent of the legislation that is being considered. So today I'm going to mention a few of the MDTA bills a few of the bills that really specifically touch upon MDTA. So thanks to the board's action back in December, you approved the legislative concept that would increase the MDTA's emergency duration authority from 180 days to 300 days. The bill was introduced by the chairs of the committees by request of MDOT as one of our departmental bills. The House is HB 288 and the Senate is SB 210. Yesterday, Bruce testified in the Senate, and it was referred to the Finance Committee. He will be jetting out of here today and going down to the House to testify in yesterday was SB 210, I'm sorry. He's going down to the House today for HB 288, which is before the House Environment and Transportation Committee, and he'll testify in support of that bill. And we provided letters of support. The hearing went well, Bruce. I don't think there were any questions. Nope, it went very well. Another bill that we have been in support of is Senator Kagan and Delegate Ziegler. They have introduced SB 322 and HB 470, which would prohibit a person from obscuring or modifying a license plate in a manner that may prevent identification. This bill alters an existing offense prohibiting a person from obscuring or modifying a vehicle registration plate in a manner that may prevent identification rather than the current requirement of intent to avoid identification. This bill in the Senate was referred to the Judicial Proceedings Committee, and in the House, it was referred to the Environment and Transportation Committee. And as Deb talked about, we have challenges collecting them when we can't read a plate, and significant impact on both law enforcement and our tolling. So we really need to have the ability to accurately and reliably allow us to see these license plates. So we have submitted letters of support, and our Director of Easy Pass Operations, Heather Coberly, testified on Tuesday in support on the Senate side, and she'll be back down next week for the House version. We also have been monitoring and looking at the Montgomery County delegation is currently considering legislation that would authorize the MDTA to operate speed monitoring systems on the ICC. Has not been introduced in the General Assembly yet. They work the bills through their delegation. And while this legislation does establish a new precedent for authorizing the placement of these systems, the sponsor of the legislation, it's Senator Kramer, drafted the legislation in a manner that leaves the discretion to the MDTA to choose the appropriate speed monitoring system and the flexibility to operate it in the manner that leaves the discretion to us. The sponsor also drafted the bill so that it's not a violation of our trust agreement because the installation of these speed monitoring devices is permissive. It's not mandatory, may, not shall. And leaving us the legal and financial discretion to implement the systems. Most importantly, this legislation provides the civil penalties resulting from the citations to be remitted back to us so that we can put back in. So we're monitoring that legislation. We'll be weighing in when it's introduced into the General Assembly on that. Now, Senator Watson and Delegate Harris, they have introduced SB 339 and HB 692. And they require, that bill is a requirement for the MDTA to conduct a study on the feasibility of capturing the image of only the rear license plate of a vehicle. The Senate version SB 339 was referred to the Finance Committee, and HB 692 was referred to the Transportation Committee. The Senate has a hearing on February 5th, the Senate version. We have been talking to the sponsors of the bill. Senator Sailing and Delegate Long, they have introduced SB 119 and SB 263, which would require that on completion of the new Francis Scott Key Bridge, that it should be named the Francis Scott Key Memorial Bridge. There was a hearing held on the Senate version in the Finance Committee, and the House Committee is in Environment and Transportation. There was a hearing held back on February 6th with the Senate Committee. We're continuing to monitor those bills. Delegate Grammer has introduced HB 679, which would require MDTA to design and locate the entrances and exits of the new Francis Scott Key Bridge to ensure that a vehicle that does not cross the bridge is not required to pay the toll. We have seen legislation like this in the past. The bill is referred to the Environment and Transportation Committee, and just today I read, saw on their website, a hearing has been scheduled for February 13th. There is no Senate cross-file on that, so we'll be weighing in on that one as well. Coming up next week is Bruce will continue to be busy, as will our finance team, and we have our budget hearings. So we have in February 5th in the House and February 6th in the Senate. So we'll be down there. Also, we've been asked to speak before two county delegations. Well, one is Eastern Shore Regional Delegation on February 14th. We've done that in years past, where we provide an update on issues that are relevant, interests that they have. A lot of times it's the Bay Bridge, dealing with Eastern Shore. And then on the 24th we've been invited to the Baltimore County Delegation, specifically for a Key Bridge update. And we will present before that. And then last session, Deb presented the one JCR report. We were required to do a second JCR report on a different subject, which is still not fully submitted and complete yet. It was requiring us to report on buffered bicycle and pedestrian lanes on our facilities. So our planning team has been working with SHA and relevant local jurisdictions to identify the appropriate locations for pedestrian walkways and bicycle ways that would cross MDTA highways or that run parallel to MDTA highways and bridges or otherwise involve our facilities. Although MDTA facilities are located alongside other state local roadways, the scope was limited to examining specific locations within our right-of-way. We'll be back to report to the board on this when it has been completed. And we will be back next month to report where all of these bills have moved in the next month. And that concludes the legislative update for January.
Any questions or comments? Busy time in Annapolis. Go ahead, sir.
I guess, Mike, the Key Bridge toll thing, I mean, they know that the toll's not for the bridge, it's for the entire highway, right?
We believe after a couple JCR reports and numerous conversations, they are aware.
Okay.
And it's, it's called a design. The reference in the bill is design. It's really about design of the gantries where the collection takes place. It's not like we'd be re-engineering a roadway, but there's still issues that you are all aware of, I think, with that.
Very good. Any other questions for Mary? All right, thank you, Mary. All right, the next agenda item is Executive Director's Report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Bruce Gardner, Executive Director of the Maryland Transportation Authority. Long agenda today, so I'll be as brief as possible. Want to just highlight some of our kind of public engagements and things that we have done since we last saw you, as well as recognize an employee of the quarter before we go to closed session. So with the Bragg continued quarterly meetings and updates, we met with them last on January 8th. There are standing agenda items and an update on the Bay Crossing study. It was good. It was right after some of those open houses, and really I felt like got good reports on all the effort that the team did on the Bay Crossing study. So they also continue to talk about the Red X. We do have, had some requests from them for additional signage regarding enforcement with the dollar fines on there. So engineering is working on some additional signage to take place in response to that. And I was able to report that out to, we reported it to the Bragg and to some of the elected officials that have been interested in that recently. Another open house that was significant was regarding our I-895 Frank First Avenue Interchange Improvements Project, that big project that you're all part of that announcement last December. For those improvements, we had relatively small turnout on Saturday, but it did include local officials represented on that, local elected officials. We had some representation there, industry, and community associations. So all that material's on the website, meeting boards, et cetera. The good news on that project is the team is doing things that they can to advance improvements that aren't impacting traffic. One of the significant things that will be done at the end of the summer is moving the toll collections to gantries so that it's not in those toll booths there. So those would be deactivated at the end of the summer. The public won't necessarily notice that, but it does clear the way, so we can do that. We're getting that done. So thanks to the engineering team for continuing on that project and doing things that won't impact the traffic flow. January 8th, in addition to being down at the Board of Public Works for the GEC contract approval by the board, and by the way, many of the Board of Public Works members and staff had the same questions that you did regarding GEC and CMI, so you're all in good company there. But we on the 8th did a Facebook page launch for the Key Bridge rebuild, and in addition to the website. But we have nearly 1,000 followers, and the average post engagement on that is 9.75%. So I'm learning all these metrics, but that is three times the average government Facebook page engagement of about 3.2%. So obviously, lots of interest in such a big project. It's proven time and again. The other proof of lots of interest in the Key Bridge project is an event that we're having on the February 3rd with Kiewit to explain to the DBE community the process for this progressive design build. So Percy and Jim and their teams have been working very hard on this event with Kiewit. It's the morning of the 3rd to really go through the process. The progressive design build, as you all have seen and experienced, is something that people are not used to. So when you award the design part of it and you have these packages for that are coming in for the guaranteed maximum price on later construction phases, there's a lot of kind of confusion in the industry, and we know what confusion creates. There's different theories about what's going on. So we really need to keep this engagement up. We're very happy to have partnered with the Black Caucus to do that. Delegate Phillips will be presenting at that event, and he's kept us and helped keep us in touch with the DBE community so that we know what some of their concerns might be, then we can address them at that event. The event is sold out. It has very much oversubscribed, so Kiewit has offered to work with us on a virtual event later in the week, potentially. We don't have a date yet on that, but just to try to make sure that those waitlisted folks know that they'll have an opportunity, if not in person, virtually. So much more engagement to come on the project with that community. On a downside in terms of what our challenges are, I think you all experienced some of this, but we did have a smishing attack that was all over the nation related to toll collection. I think I got 3 messages myself from foreign telephone numbers, on text messages. So we worked heavily with the media and some really good coverage from the local media on what people need to do to avoid clicking on that, and how we do engage with them if they need to check on their Easy Pass. Again, the mobile app is the best way for people to keep certain about what their account is doing. So in closing, I'd like to shift over to what is always a pleasant topic, is that's recognizing some exceptional employees here at the MDTA. Our employee of the quarter for this quarter started with the MDTA in July of 2008. That employee was nominated for exemplary customer service and leadership in response to the Key Bridge collapse. This employee coordinated their structures engineering team and in-house and consultant personnel to provide timely and complete information requested by a multitude of internal and external customers. They did this on top of providing technical support for the needs related to the Key Bridge and oversight of other structures, managing multiple programs, projects, and task orders. They did this with courtesy, respect, and professionalism, which is always appreciated. The employee of the quarter established an Ignite PE study group to offer engineers within MDTA that are interested in obtaining their PE the opportunity to work together to solve problems, brainstorm, and collectively share information. There's multiple elements to that and multiple objectives to that effort, including doing mock exams, sample problems for future exams. So really appreciate that kind of internal development of our staff that pays dividends in the future. This employee continually offers sessions at a time that it works for staff and has taken the effort to craft a detailed syllabus on a regular cycle for candidates. Since they started this system, there are a few new PEs in OEC, so that's good proof of how it's going. And our employee of the quarter was nominated by Tequeste, so appreciate his recognizing of employees. And with that, please help me congratulate Ruel Sabaneo, the 2024 Employee of the Quarter for the 4th quarter. That concludes my remarks.
Any questions for Bruce? If not? Yeah, that'd be fine. Okay. Okay, very good. We've now reached the closed session portion of the agenda. This closed session is scheduled for the board members and designated staff. For For those persons in this room and on live stream, as soon as we have completed the closed session, we will come back to this room to ratify any actions that might be taken in closed session and to continue with the remainder of the agenda in open session. We appreciate your patience. Per Maryland Open Meetings Act, the MDTA Board will meet in closed session under General Provisions Articles Sections 3-305B1 to discuss the compensation of one or more specific individuals of the MDTA Police Command Staff, Sections 3-305B10 and 12 to receive an update on deployment of police staff and resources and other security measures, to discuss a pending investigation involving possible criminal conduct, and Sections 3-305B8 to receive a status update on all litigation currently pending against the MDTA. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
Member Gangemi, so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Cox. The time now is 10:15, and we'll now go into closed session. Thank you.
Do we need to vote?
Oh,
need to
please
vote.
vote to go into closed session.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye. Thank you very much.
Aye.
Thank you, Member Ritchie. Good to go? Okay. All right, good morning. The time now is 10:44 a.m., and the board has completed its closed session. Is there a motion to ratify the action taken in closed session to approve extending the same compensation benefits to the members of the MDTA Police Command Staff that will be granted to union members under the collective bargaining agreement that was approved by the MDTA board earlier this meeting?
So moved. Member
Mr. Cox, is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
At this point, the agenda is complete. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Move to adjourn?
Also moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That now concludes the MDT